The breakup between NewJeans and ADOR in 2024 and 2025 has become one of the most emotionally charged and divisive scandals the K-pop industry has ever seen. And now that the court has spoken, the girls have been extremely divided on returning to the company. The NewJeans versus ADOR conflict has turned into a public legal war over the past 2 years, and the aftermath of the final hearing, which ruled against the group, has created a level of internal division that fans had never expected to see from a group once praised for its unity. The conflict began when ADOR dismissed CEO Min Hee-jin in 2024. She had been recognized as the creative backbone of NewJeans and the person who was perhaps most credited with conceptualizing their brand, guiding their image, and working closely with the members since their trainee years. And her abrupt removal from the company was shocking enough, but NewJeans' reaction to it only made things more complicated as it showed just how involved Hee-jin had been in their lives. The members accused ADOR of mistreatment, deliberate miscommunication, and manipulation, while also demanding an internal investigation and the reinstatement of Min Hee-jin as CEO. When those demands were ignored, the 5 members collectively announced their intent to terminate their contracts and leave ADOR altogether. ADOR's response of suing the group has held headlines for months now, as they argued that their contracts remained binding until they expire in 2029. But even with the technical legalities of their contract, NewJeans and their families were set on fighting the company, claiming that they had broken trust and coerced the members into decisions that violated their artistic and personal rights. Then, in late 2025, everything changed as a South Korean court ruled that the members' contracts with ADOR were indeed valid. Denying their attempt to escape the label, NewJeans immediately announced that they planned to appeal, but even before the appeal process could begin, ADOR released a statement that changed things yet again as 2 of the members, Haerin and Hae-in, had reached out to ADOR to discuss continuing under the existing contract. According to the official notice, both members and their families carefully considered the court's ruling and ultimately chose to remain with the company, independent of the other 3 members' decisions. This was the first time the group was so publicly and obviously split on the case, as before, everything had been handled by NewJeans as a united group. ADOR even emphasized that the choice was voluntary, that they respected the members' wishes, and that they would fully support the 2 members moving forward. They also asked the public not to speculate about the internal dynamics of the group, a message that, of course, did nothing to calm speculation. Almost immediately, online discussions erupted. Many Korean netizens felt the statement confirmed the existence of an alleged major rift between the members, something fans had only speculated about previously. International netizens also joined the discussion, even suggesting that the 2 youngest members, both minors throughout most of the conflict, might have been more easily persuaded by the company, or at least less willing to risk a years-long legal battle, which is why they eventually folded to the demands. This was made more possible as the continuously released information about what had gone down seemed to allege that Haerin and Hae-in had actively participated in discussions with ADOR leadership, while the other 3 members, Minji, Hani, and Danielle, were described as refusing cooperation. A widely shared insider report stated that the guardians of 4 members met with ADOR's new CEO Lee Do-kyung, and while Haerin and Hae-in's families agreed to discuss terms of continuing, the other 3 members' representatives simply delivered conditions, then abruptly left the meeting. To many who were watching the case closely, this seemed like a sign that things weren't going as smoothly internally between the girls, and that things could have even been going badly long before the situation came to light. Some netizens framed the split based on the fact that the minor members could have also been more heavily guided by their parents, who were perhaps more set on making sure that they avoided further conflict, especially as it would most likely affect the household. Meanwhile, the older members who perhaps have more means to sustain themselves and also seem to be deeply loyal to their former CEO Min Hee-jin, especially Minji, could have been more hesitant to accept any deal that would ultimately put them back under ADOR after everything that had happened with Min Hee-jin. However, several people online actually interpreted the split as a sign that Haerin and Hae-in were the ones acting with a clearer judgment as opposed to their older members, as they argued that the legal fight was unwinnable from the beginning and that continuing the battle only damaged the group's future. On the other side, others saw it as a betrayal and maybe even a sign that the youngest members were more willing to give up the group's previously unified stance. One popular online comment said, "I honestly thought they'd be too stubborn to ever do something like this, but now that they are, I'm not surprised it's these members in particular. I don't see Hani or Danielle going back." Things were only made more complicated online as alleged updates about the case were spread by popular media sites with statements like, "Law firms confirm that ADOR has sufficient grounds to terminate Hani, Minji, and Danielle's contract as they're ruminating over whether to take them back or not." Many saw this as media's trying to create an even deeper divide between the 3 members and the company, perhaps even making it out to look like the bad decision compared to the other 2 members. The divide between the members also seemed to reflect a growing divide in the fandom. Some blamed Hybe and ADOR for manipulating the situation, while others blamed Min Hee-jin Jin for influencing the members, and others even blamed the members themselves for dragging on the case based on what they considered to be immaturity, entitlement, or even ingratitude. Some even predicted that the other 3 members would never return unless ADOR reinstated Min Hee-jin, something the company had made clear they would not do. And after everything the group has gone through, instead of coming out on top stronger, many seem to believe that NewJeans is no longer a united group. However, the second wave of statements that followed the initial division inside NewJeans shifted the entire trajectory of the controversy again and raised even more questions about what was happening privately between the members. A new announcement emerged, this time not from ADOR, but instead a separate and somewhat urgent statement from Minji, Hani, and Danielle, which declared that they too had decided to return to the label after careful discussion. The fact that the statement did not come from ADOR, and that the company declined to confirm anything created even more confusion. What stood out most, however, was the explanation that the announcement had been delayed because one member was in Antarctica. This detail instantly became a centerpiece of discussion, not only because of how unusual it was, but because it made the internal state of the group feel strange and disjointed, as the members clearly weren't even together throughout these tough procedures. It also implied that the 3 members were forced to scramble to meet a deadline, and that they were doing so under some unexpectedly complicated circumstances. Their wording also suggested that ADOR was not trying to reach out to them personally, which only deepened the sense that the relationship between the label and these members was still tense, even if they were agreeing to return on paper. In fact, according to some media sources, not only hadn't ADOR reached out, but they also seemed to have been making it difficult for the girls when they themselves ended up reaching out, as one statement said. One article read, "Korean media reveals that the remaining 3 NewJeans members waited 30 minutes trying to contact ADOR after learning about Haerin and Haeun's return." However, once the news spread that this was actually true and that the members did end up talking with ADOR and agreeing to return under the contract, reactions online were sharply divided. A common response was complete disbelief, as many said, "All of them are going back? Now that is something I'm shocked about." Others also framed it as an inevitable outcome rather than an actual sincere reconciliation, saying, "The other 3 unilaterally announced to the media they'd return because they only had 1 day left before court deadline." It seems like a widely spread opinion online is that the members were cornered to the solution, especially since the court ruling had confirmed the contract's legality. In fact, some have even speculated that the 2 members agreeing to join without the others being involved in the decision could have been an unwanted push for the 3 remaining members as a form of damage control. The mention of Antarctica even became symbolic and a sort of sign that the group was scattered physically and emotionally, and if there's one thing the group refuses to do, it's to seem divided, which is why 2 members' families making the decision for them could have effectively forced the hands of the adult members after seeing the announcement that was made without them. However, after the announcement was made, a fan happened to run into Hani, who had been the member traveling to Antarctica, and reported that she had dyed her hair brown and that she seemed very happy. In fact, Hani even signed autographs in the street, which could be another sign of her excitement to return to the idol life. And now that all 5 members are together again, it also seems like they have decided to drop the idea of appealing the court ruling regarding the validity of their contracts. The deadline for an appeal officially passed on the 14th of November at midnight, which means that the ruling that had been made on the 30th of October has now officially been finalized. This does seem like the struggle is finally ending, as the girls are no longer fighting against their company, and ADOR has even added a comment saying, "We are coordinating individual meetings with each member and will do our best to ensure smooth discussions." Over the next few weeks, things will most likely be discussed and arranged in order for the group to actually get back on its feet. However, it's impossible to forget how much the girls fought to not end up here, which is why the tension might take some time to disappear completely. If there truly is any sort of divide between the girls because of the decision made by the first 2 members, it doesn't seem to have any effect on the group now, especially as any divide would most likely have been put behind them in order to finally end the nightmare that has been plaguing the group for the past 2 years.